is active in her school and community. She has earned straight A's while attending 4 different schools in 3 states and has received accolades for her academic achievement and citizenship. She serves as a leader in her school as president of the Builders Club, vice president of the Beta Club, and a member of the Marlin Leadership. She has been a member of her school's choir for the past 9 years and was selected to the LMEA District 9 Honor Corps. Her enthusiasm for the arts and helping others extends outside of her school, where she participates in the theater program at Shield Studio and plays both the guitar and ukulele at North Lake Academy of Music. She volunteers her time throughout the community with Relay for Life, St. Tammany Rocks, Keep Mandeville Beautiful, and Operation We Care. Isabella is accompanied by her parents, Berto and Carla Rossi, and the Montleon principal, Sherry Jones. Before I ask you to get started, that is a very, very impressive resume, young lady. And we are all very proud of you, and your parents should be extremely proud of you. So would you please lead us in the pledge?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Mr. Balisaro.
Mr. Bob Rouse, would you please come up to the podium? Mr. Rouse is going to handle the invocation. Just a little background information on Mr. Rouse. He is the chaplain coordinator for the St. Tammany Parish Coroner's Office. He's co-leader of the Slidell Ministerial Association. He has his own local radio show host, and he's the recording secretary of the Ministerial Alliance of Greater St. Tammany. He's staff pastor at New Beginnings Church, Slidell, Louisiana. He's a board member of the Good Sam's Ministry. He's faith-based liaison for the St. Tammany Parish Office of Homeland Security Preparedness. He's a retired Assembly of God foreign missionary serving in Southern and Eastern Europe from 1992 to 2013. Prior to the ministry service, Bob was a local self-employed businessman and business consultant to medical and dental clients for over 25 years. Bob was born and raised in New Orleans, educated in public school, and studies accounting in the University of New Orleans. He moved to Slidell in 1965. Thank you. You lead the invocation.
Thank you for having me today. Let's stand together and bow our heads. Gracious Heavenly Father, we thank you this day for all your many blessings. We are grateful for your love and your provision for all of us. Thank you for this place called St. Tammany Parish, where we have chosen to make our homes. You have blessed this ground and given us hope for a bright future here on the north shore of Lake Pontchartrain. Father, at the beginning of this meeting, we invite your holy presence into this place. Let nothing that is said and done here tonight, let everything that is said and done here tonight bring honor to you in your holy name. Bless these elected officials for their willingness to serve their fellow citizens of St. Tammany in this special way. As they deliberate tonight, please give them insight and understanding into each issue. Let nothing be hidden from their understanding. Help them to foresee all the implications of the various issues and to make wise decisions for all the citizens of St. Tammany. Guide these men and women in the ways of righteousness and peace. We recognize that all authority to govern over the citizens of St. Tammany begins with you. We're grateful tonight. We give you this time, and we ask that you bless it in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you.
God bless you.
Madam Clerk, would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Dean, Mr. Fitzgerald, Mr. Thompson, Mr. Toledano, Mr. Tanner, Mr. Belisario,
Here.
Mr. Lorino,
Here.
Mr. Groby, Mr. Canulet, Ms. O'Brien, Mr. Stefanczyk, Mr. Bender, Ms. Blanchard, Mr. Smith. You have a quorum.
Thank you, ma'am. We're going to go to the presentations, but what we're going to do tonight is we're going to skip down, and we're going to start with presentation number 5, if that's okay, Madam President. And Ms. Blanchard. Mr. Talladant, okay, he's up.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So you all are in for a treat tonight.
Thank you,
It's going to be a
ma'am.
little chaotic, so bear with us, but we're going to get it done, okay?
Yes, ma'am.
We're now going to present the recipients of these proclamations.
Thank you.
Come on out, guys.
We're going to start with the coach from St. Paul. And you have a...
Congratulations.
Thank you.
if you'd like.
Call the name.
Yes. Sophomore Caleb McCoutry.
Okay, very good.
Tyler Geis. Jimmy Till. JP Bourgeois. James Bradford. Senior Captain Connor Walmsley.
Might turn that around and everybody will see what we're doing on.
Senior Matthew Weimer. Senior Captain Philip Pierce. Senior Matthew Lyon. Junior Captain, State MVP, Michael Dufour. Sophomore CJ Peretti. Senior goalkeeper, Trace Roberts. Sophomore goalkeeper, Hunter Kurgison. Thank you.
Thank you.
SSA, thank you. If you want to go stand by.
Stand by this,
Gentlemen.
right? We're going to do SSA.
We'll have to, SSA, if you want to call the girls' names out.
Thank you all very much. And guys, congratulations again. The wonderful girls from SSA could not be here tonight, and I'm happy to call off their names for our official record. Telling you at first that this wonderful group of ladies won the state Division I Girls Soccer Championship. Their coaches here tonight. Not only are they great athletes, but they had a 3.5 average grade average for these wonderful athletes. And for your record, their names, of which some cases I'll mispronounce with apologies to their family: Elizabeth Calmont, Peyton Sherman, Sydney Vince, Isabel Flug, Rennie Shepard, Kiki Kelly, Sarah Lumbos, Mary Ellen White, Olivia LaCava, Brooke Venaces, Emma Hillberry, Marion Scott, Cameron Donahue, Sarah Massey, Amy Kazu, Haley Waterhouse, Monty Berger, Alicia Meneses, Olivia Lucatus, Shelby Donahue, and Olivia Kuros. Congratulations to all those great ladies. Yeah. What's that?
We'll send the certificate.
Yeah, the certificates, unless there's a representative from the school, we'll make sure the school gets them.
This is,
Thank you.
no, SSA, I need those back.
Yeah.
This one is SSA,
I told you it
yes.
might be chaotic.
Okay. So, and we'll give the coaches an opportunity to speak in just one moment. I'll let you introduce the North Shore girls and that they were the finalists. There we go. We'll get there.
Yeah. right, we're ready now.
Mackenzie Duty. Caroline Masker. Sarah Savage. Samantha Leffler. Sarah McGill. Allie Johnson. Molly McReynolds. Vivian Spees. Caitlin Johnson. Michaela Price. Chelsea Biggs. Lindsay Wheat. Megan Kittrell. Sephora Vaccaro. Carly Chase. Brooke Tutra. Catherine Murders.
We have most of, they can come back. We also have, in addition, we have the All-Star. Many of these players up here not only are on their team, but they're also All-Stars. You also have a certificate. I'll be calling your name out here. We'll give you the certificate afterwards. And then we have two more. So we have Caleb Newton from Mandeville, that's an All-Star. Connor Wamsley from St. Paul's. Luke Price from North Shore. Austin Dunlap, We have Katie Grubbs and Brittany Bertram. You can go around. Yes, sir. Bailey Dayton and Philip Pierce. We have Michaela Boyer and Ashley Burke. Thank you. That's it. We should have everybody, huh? Yeah, that's it. That should be all.
Anybody here not play soccer?
Okay. Oh, we have another gentleman. Sir, if you want to come this way and tell us your name. Are you here with us or no? Are you with it or are you just here as moral support? Is that one? Okay, come. May we have your name to congratulate you? Thank you for making. We'll let the coach congratulate you in a minute. All right, Madam President, if you may, take over.
So thank you for your patience to everyone. And Mr. Chairman, I said it might be a little chaotic, but it's certainly worth it. St. Tammany Parish Administration and the Council would like to acknowledge the competitive soccer players who have shown outstanding performance in competing for the 2019 All-State Sugar Bowl LHSAA Division I Girls and Boys State Championships while representing St. Tammany Parish. Soccer affords players the ability to learn teamwork, sportsmanship, and builds endurance, as you all know. Teammates share a common bond that promotes a sense of unity and fosters friendships. These players exemplify high moral character, outstanding athleticism, and true sportsmanship. St. Tammany Parish is proud of their achievement, and we hereby recognize, congratulate, and celebrate their athletic and academic accomplishments, and encourage all citizens of St. Tammany Parish to congratulate these players for their achievements. I'd also like to congratulate their parents for instilling in them commitment and dedication from an early start in life. We all know the vital role each of you play in this effort, and also the coaches who have been there with them every minute. Thank you all for making St. Tammany proud.
Okay, Mr. Simpson, it's yours. Please. Richard, we'll take a picture. But boys and girls, why don't you all just stand right where you are, and what we'll do is we'll have the meeting, and you can stand right there, okay?
Thoroughly enjoyed. Congratulations. Congrats. Congratulations.
Yeah, I'm gonna take care of it.
Not quite what I wanted. Next time I'd be perfect.
Thank you.
Yeah. That's all that's good. What's that?
Kelly.
Yeah, absolutely.
Kelly.
That's what I said. And I'm gonna thin the rest of them out when I
That's
get the
what's
short-term runners.
Ready?
I think we have it there, Madam President, so
Yes.
whenever you're ready.
Thank you. You're probably going to be tired of hearing me speak tonight. I don't normally speak this much, but tonight I will.
Well, you go right ahead.
So tonight is my privilege to read a proclamation for our employees of the month. We have two this time. Whereas John Spaff Goodnow has been a St. Tammany Parish employee since February of 2011 and serves as a Supervisor 3 for trace operations in the Department of Public Works, and Dr. Elizabeth Diet Smythe serves as the Engineering Regulatory, come on up, guys, Regulatory Manager in the Planning and Development Engineering Department since September of 2007. And whereas Spaff is a highly skilled landscape architect and originally worked to manage Camp Salmon, as well as development of landscape plans for all parish projects. And whereas Dr. Smythe received her PhD in civil engineering from Louisiana State University, go Tigers, and has had extensive training with the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, the Louisiana Department of Environmental Quality, and the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. She is the parish's regulatory manager and has been instrumental securing funds through several successful grant applications focused on water quality. And whereas together, Spaff and Diet worked for over a year to develop the Adopt a Pond program, a project created to improve local water quality and environment, whereby junior high and high school students joined together to test and assess the water quality of 7 parish detention and retention ponds, and to plant more than 2,300 trees along the banks of the ponds to preserve our tree canopy, enhance water quality improvements, increase flood mitigation, and to create eco corridors to sustain wildlife habitat in our community. And whereas Spaff Goodnow and Diet Smythe are exceptional employees and perform their duties in an exemplary manner, now therefore I, Patricia Brister, as president of St. Tammany Parish, do hereby recognize the hard work and accomplishment of Spaff Goodnow and Diet Smythe as employees of the month for April 2019. And I certainly encourage all employees of St. Tammany Parish to thank them for their contributions and commitment to keeping St. Tammany such a beautiful place to live. Thank you both for all you do every day.
Thank you.
A lot of printing this week. Thank you guys very much. Thank you. Thank you.
We've got another short-term runner.
Ready?
Madam President?
All right. You two want to come up, please? Be with me. Come on, Willie, you too. This is such an honor for me to be able to do this tonight. This is the part of my job that I love so much. Come right over here. There we go. There are many, many servicemen and women across this nation who selflessly give of themselves to secure our borders and protect our country. And tonight, I have the honor to honor one in particular, Colonel Murphy Neal Jones. Accepting for Colonel Jones tonight is his sister-in-law, Loretta Chandler, accompanied by, her son, Brandon. Thank you, Brandon. Accompanied by representatives of the Veterans and Military Affairs Advisory Council. And I'm glad you're up here too tonight. So if you will indulge me, I will once again read one more proclamation.
Please.
Whereas Colonel Murphy Neal Jones served our great country with a distinction in the U.S. Air Force from June 1960 until his retirement in January 1980, and was a prisoner of war in Hanoi, Vietnam for 6.5 years, from June 1966 until his release in February 1973. And whereas Colonel Jones was born in Baton Rouge, Louisiana on January 3rd, 1938, grew up in Baton Rouge, attended Tulane University on a football scholarship, and in March 1957, he married the former Glenda Jean Blythe. Together, they were blessed with 2 beautiful children, Murphy Neal Jr. and Darla Ann. After retiring from the Air Force, he returned to Tulane in 1990 as Director of Development for Athletics until his retirement in 2000. He then lived in St. Tammany Parish until moving to Williamsport, Delaware in 2018 to be close to his daughter. And whereas as a U.S. combat pilot, Colonel Jones was flying out of Takli Air Base, Thailand, on his 3rd combat tour in Southeast Asia. When he was shot down on June 29, 1966, he was badly injured when he ejected from his aircraft at low altitude and was immediately captured by the North Vietnamese. He was inhumanely treated as a prisoner of war and endured many abuses at the hands of his captors. His faith and his steadfast pride, bravery, and dedication to our country sustained him until he was released on February 12, 1973. Whereas Colonel Murphy Neal Jones displayed extraordinary skills, abilities, and bravery during his valiant military career, and whereas U.S. Air Force pilot Colonel Murphy Neal Jones passed away on January 31st, 2019, and will forever be remembered as a true American hero. Now, therefore, it is my pleasure as an honor as Patricia Brister as President of St. Tammany Parish, do hereby remember, recognize, and honor the bravery and selfless contributions of Colonel Murphy Neal Jones. And certainly I encourage all citizens of St. Tammany Parish to thank our veterans in St. Tammany Parish and across this nation for their service and unwavering commitment to our great country. We can never thank you enough. Thank you. Thanks, guys. Thanks, Willie. And these 2 gentlemen work very, very hard for our veterans every day in St. Tammany Parish, so I'm always happy to see them here, too. Willie Bryce and Ed, Cowboy Ed. So, all right. One more.
Yes, ma'am.
And then I'm going to sit down.
Go right ahead.
Okay. So as you know, our employees voluntarily decided to ask for the possibility of wearing jeans on Friday. And for that, they make a donation to their charities that they choose. So that's what we're here tonight for. Kim, come up. And this young woman I've known since she was a baby. And I love seeing them growing up right here in St. Tammany. So Kim is with James Storehouse. And James Storehouse is our Jean Day charity recipient. And I'd like to ask its founder, Kim, to join me at the podium. James Storehouse is a fantastic organization that works to fund the unmet needs for foster children in our community. This includes providing cribs, beds, and bunk beds in order for a child to be placed into a foster home, food and other necessities for foster parents who are low income or live paycheck to paycheck, sports uniforms and fees so foster children can participate in extracurricular activities just like other children. Their mission is to provide physical and relationship support from crib to college for foster children and families through the creation of partnerships with government, faith, business, and community. On behalf of all employees of St. Tammany Parish, I am thrilled to present this contribution of $4,250 to James Storehouse, and thank you for your efforts every day. Thank you. This is one of their favorite charities. Thank you very much, Kim. And here's the real check, so I won't forget to give it to you. Thank you very much, and thank you for doing what you do to make us a great parish. So if it's okay, Mr. Chairman, if Kim could say just a couple words, because she has worked so hard to get this going.
Yes, ma'am.
Please, Kim.
Didn't know I was going to get a chance to speak, so I'll make it real quick because these kids need a voice and they need you all to know who they are and what they need. I just thank you so much for this. This is actually going to go a very long way, and how we're providing for these kids in St. Tammany Parish. We actually have one of the highest numbers of kids in foster care in the whole state of Louisiana, believe it or not, only second to Livingston Parish. And so the opioid epidemic, as you all have heard probably a lot about, even in these chambers, is the result of that. So we do have a crisis, not only in the nation, in Louisiana, but in our own backyards. Too many kids coming into foster care, not enough families to support them. So I'm asking all those looking at us, I guess, video on TV, whatever, whatnot, that we need you, if you're ever feeling called to be a foster parent, now is the time. And you can go to jslouisiana.org to find out how you can help us with beds, how you can help us. A lot of times they come in just with the clothes on their backs when they're detained for abuse and neglect. So we can use, anybody can provide something, diapers or a family, and anywhere in between will help provide those resources for these kids through your generosity. We get no government dollars, but we clearly receive Gene money from the government employees. So thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you for all you do for the children. It's really humbling, and thank you very much. Ms. O'Brien. Take care of the mic.
You have another one. Well, it's always an honor and a privilege to recognize different individuals or entities in Mandeville, and especially in District 10, of course. And honestly, we're all very, very blessed just to be in St. Tammany Parish. I mean, we have so many cities, towns, and areas that have great amenities, great schools, and in general, just a great quality of life. That's why so many people keep on trying to move here. But tonight, I'm very proud to congratulate and recognize the City of Mandeville for a rather impressive list of awards, designations, and recognitions. And I will tell you, just every time I walk along the lakefront, I realize how blessed we are to be here. But tonight, our certificate shows quite an accomplishment. So I want to congratulate everybody who works with the city. And, you know, one thing that's not here is the people. And I think it's the people that have made a lot of this happen. So I think y'all have done a wonderful job. So St. Tammany Parish government desires to recognize and congratulate the City of Mandeville for receiving several designations, including being named the best place to escape in Louisiana by Expedia, which is what we started to do, but then we realized we had quite a list besides that. Tree City USA by the Arbor Foundation. One of the best places to retire by Niche, and safest city in the state by safehome.org. So we recognize the city of Mandeville for its many designations and its positive impact on St. Tammany. I feel very honored to be a part of Mandeville, and I just feel so honored and blessed to be a part of the people, one of the people who represents Mandeville. Councilman Lorino, do you want to say a few words? Because he also represents the other half of Mandeville.
Thank you, Ms. O'Brien. Mr. Mayor, I've only been doing this for about 3 years, and all I can say is you work 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, and Mandeville has been well-served by your efforts, and congratulations to you and all your employees. Thank you very much. Thank you, sir.
You want to say a few words?
Sure. I would just like to add my congratulations, and Mandeville is a part of this wonderful parish, and it makes this parish even better every day. You just have to walk on that lakefront one time to know that. So thank you, Mayor. Thank you. Thank you. And you want to introduce?
I was about to say, introduce you.
Yeah, I have with me my executive assistant, Marlene Peachy, and also Aaliyah Casbernet, who's our cultural development person. And, you know, this is, you know, all of the little, you know, places to escape to or best place to retire or whatever. I mean, this goes for many, many years of a number of people working very hard to just make Mandeville a great place to live. And that's what we do. And, you know, the rest of the stuff is just a little bit nicer, you know, to be recognized for. You know, another thing that we're doing in Mandeville, and I would like to introduce it to the council, you know, when President Brister says, get off of the trace and make, you know, add trails to the Tammany Trace, it's one of those things that we looked at doing. And a number of years ago, we wanted to tell the story of Mandeville. What's one of the nicest things about Mandeville and all of our towns in St. Tammany is the history that we all have. And so we started putting together facts about locations and you know, what we could do as far as putting together a walking and biking tour of Mandeville and utilizing not only, you know, the history that we have, but also using technology as far as to help tell the story. So this is what we have come up with. We started with 20 locations on, I'm just going to open this up for you. And these are 20 locations that have QR reader codes, all right? And each one of those locations, when you go by and you see one of these placards right there, you can use your smartphone and a QR reader on it to click onto it, and it'll give you a picture of what was there maybe 100 years ago and tell you the story about it. And it was one of the things that we introduced to the Municipal Association here in St. Tammany to maybe see if we could get it spread out throughout all of our cities so that it gives you an opportunity to get off of the trace and know how to, no matter how big or small of a city, it's pretty affordable as far as to be able to tell the story of a rich history that we have in St. Tammany. So we're very proud as far as to kind of, you know, lead that effort right there and hopefully help other cities develop their history and telling their story. All right, and so that's about it. Well, thank you so much for the award here. We'll go back and put this in a predominant place here in at City Hall.
Well, congratulations. That's an impressive list. So,
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
See how back, so it might be go in between next to Dawn.
Okay, Madam President, you finished for tonight? Thank you, ma'am. Before we go to the ordinance for introduction, I've noticed we have a number of cards for people wishing to speak on the short-term rental at the very end of the meeting. And I really appreciate everybody coming out and putting a card in and wanting to speak. But I just want everyone to know all we will be doing tonight is referring what we have to the Planning and Zoning Commission. Therefore, the Planning and Zoning Commission will hear it, look at it, and then that's the time for any comments or any suggestions and things like that at Planning and Zoning. Then Planning and Zoning will send it back to the council for consideration. When it comes back to the council for consideration, that once again is the time to come in and speak specifically on certain issues. But I just wanted you all to know that probably there's no need to sit here, but I'd love you to stay for the whole meeting. But there's really no need at this time, unless you want to talk about whether or not we should send it to Planning and Zoning. But I think this is something Mr. Stefancic has been working on, and will probably go to Planning and Zoning. There'll be plenty of time for discussion at that meeting, and then it will come back to the council, and there'll be extra time to discuss it at the council, maybe 1 or 2 meetings. So I just wanted to pass that on in case anyone wanted to leave. If you don't, you're more than welcome to stay, and then when we get to it, if you want to comment on it, but we won't be talking specifics of the ordinance and whether, how to do it or how not to do it. So I just wanted to put that out there to you. Thank you. I did my glasses. You got my glasses? Okay. Okay. Oh, yeah, I'll get them. I was just looking for I probably have them in my pocket. Oh, no. Okay. No, I got it. That's fine. Thank you. Okay. We'll go to appointments. Number 1, resolution to appoint David Talmadge to fill a vacant position on the Board of Commissioners for Sewer District Number 1.
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Balisaro, second by Mr. Tanner. Please vote.
Mr. Canulet? Motion is unanimous, 2 absent.
Thank you. We'll go to the consent calendar. Any items not pulled from the consent calendar are automatically approved in whole by 1 vote. Items pulled from the consent calendar are discussed and voted upon individually. A majority of voted entire council 8 is required to adopt the consent calendar. The items that I have pulled thus far under introductions is number 2, 6155. Resolutions, number 2, C-6089. Number 3, C-6090. Number 4, C-6091. Number 18, C-6105. Number 19, C-6106. Number 20, C-6107. Mr. Fitzgerald, do you have anything you'd like to have pulled, sir? Mr. Thompson? Mr. Toledano?
No, thank you.
Mr. Tanner?
Okay.
Mr. Balsero?
Yes, I'd like to pull resolution number 14C6101.
Okay. Anything else? Mr. Canulette? Ms. O'Brien? Mr. Stavansik? Mr. Bender? Ms. Blanchard? Mr. Smith? Yes, sir. Madam President or administration, anything to pull? Okay. Anything from legal that would you like to have pulled? Anyone in the audience, would you have anything that you would like to have pulled from the calendar to discuss? Hearing none, do I have a motion? Motion by Mr. Canulette, second by Ms. O'Brien. Please vote.
Motion is unanimous, 2 absent.
Thank you. All items not pulled or approved. Mr. Toledano, did you want to?
Yes. Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. At this time, I'd ask my fellow councilman to consider deviating from.
Put your mic.
What it is.
Is it green?
It's nothing.
Go ahead. Go ahead, Rackett.
Okay, in any event, can you hear me now? Thank you. On our agenda tonight is the consideration of the council to the 3 ITEP applications. Mr. Massengill, who represents the St. Tammany Economic Development Corporation, is in the audience to report to us on this. He also has a companion and simultaneous obligation with the St. I'm asking for the agenda deviation now.
I'm sorry, go ahead. You want to ask if we can move it up on the agenda?
Right, exactly. But I'm not sure what these gentlemen were saying to me, but in any event, because he has to be at the school board to make a simultaneous report, I'm going to ask us to consider moving this agenda item for these 3 items up
That's
to
fine.
consideration right now, if you don't mind. Okay?
That'll be fine.
Yeah.
I'll second.
Any, I'm sorry? No, they're not first. They're further down, Jerry, and he has to go somewhere else right now. Okay, thank you. Seeing no objection, we'll do that. Mr. Toledano, Resolution CS number 6089, resolution to approve, reject a board-approved application for industrial tax exemption by Dependable Glass Works.
Thank you very much, and I presume the mic is working, but I'm not sure. Just very quickly, in deference to the time, you have before you tonight, all of us, 3 of these exemptions. The first one is Dependable Glass. The representative is present in the audience, Mr. Foxworth. If you recall, these exemptions are brought to us pursuant to Louisiana legislature's requirement that local governments have a right to approve or disapprove or take no action for that matter on these exemptions. But sometime before, what you asked your finance committee to do was to vet these applications first before they came back to you. We did exactly that. In addition to that, the St. Tammany Economic Development Corporation likewise vetted them, and we had Mr. Massengill come to our Finance Committee to report in detail. Moreover, Mr. Foxworth and the gentleman from the other 2 companies were also present and answered an extensive number of questions. The bottom line is, at the end of those meetings, your Finance Committee has recommended in specific order Resolution 6089, which is a resolution to approve the industrial tax exemption by dependable glass. We recommend that favorably, and I would ask Mr. Massengill to step up for the record, make a brief report. If there's any questions, we can answer the same, and then we'll move to the next one.
Before you ask him to do that, which I should do, but that's okay, is there a second to that?
I'll second. Thank you very much.
Motion by Mr. Brown. Thank you. Now it's your turn. He's a little bit long, and I know you're in a hurry, and I apologize, but you go right ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Madam President, Council. Thank you very much for giving us an opportunity to come back. A couple of things on the outset. In your packet, you do have a couple of things. One, you've got our exemption analysis spreadsheet on the ROI. You've also got the summary cost-benefit analysis along with the other stuff that we've been doing in the course of this process. And again, Don, thank you for you and your team's help on this. Also, I'd like to just, again, Norrin Foxworth from Dependable Glass. We also have Brandon Lester from MECO, and of course, Mr. Peter Smith representing Diversified. I'm going to speak to all three of these projects at once. And just as I frame this real quickly, this is an 80-year-old economic development tool that's very important to us in our business, focused on manufacturing only for the purposes to relocate, expand, or to retain jobs here in Louisiana and here in St. Tammany Parish. This program has changed, which is why we're here talking about this new process. And one of the most significant changes is giving the local entities an opportunity to engage in this and to express their voice. Very important tool for us as it relates to incentive. Many of the states in this country all have incentive packages, and some, 36 to be exact, have exact ITEP-related type of incentives for businesses that allows for expansions to happen more quickly, that for us helps create jobs and helps additional wealth creation. In this particular case here in Louisiana, the new rules, ITEP provides 80% tax abatement on new property taxes only related to projects for up to 5 years and then 10 years. Some of the things that's important as we evaluated this is just as a reminder, the parish will lose no tax revenues. The abatement only applies to new property taxes resulting from the expansion of these particular projects. The abatement is an opportunity cost that we exchange for positive impacts that outweigh, in our opinion, the ITEP benefit. To put this in perspective, if a company is paying $50,000 in taxes prior to the project, they will not pay less as a result. They will always pay more taxes than what was there before. And 20% of new taxes go into effect immediately. 80% of that goes back onto the rolls after a period of time, either 5 or 10 years. There is no scenario with the adjustment of the ITEP rules and the new provisions that are put in place where a parish is going to lose existing tax revenues. The other thing that we feel that's important to this is the kind of oversight and the examination that is put in place within this new process. There is considerable amount of examination and oversight going through this review process. It's reviewed by LAD first and foremost when they do the advance, and then they go through ultimately for technical compliance and then reviewed by the Board of Commerce and Industry, and then back here for us to engage. And then following that, LAD does a final cursory review and then signed off by the governor. With us at the St. Tammany Corporation, we have actually engaged in this process to add another level of vetting and coordination and alignment in the process on behalf of business and you all as an extension of what we're trying to do. It is our sense that we are developing an additional review process, but because of the timing of these three projects and how they hit, we actually commissioned an independent third-party economist that many of you may know, Dr. Ed B. of Thai American Management Company. He's well known in this aspect of it, and this economic model is actually something that is very common in this practice. The impact studies consisted of a benefit to cost ratio that looked at multipliers of this project investment in our community, examining factors such as new income taxes, secondary jobs created as a result, effects on local government and support industries, additional wear and tear even on transportation infrastructure, and particularly as it relates to a very conservative picture of the projects. The findings of these projects yield a net positive impact on St. Tammany Parish's economic development landscape. The expansion of dependable glass has an ROI of $2.80 for every dollar of new government expenses. The expansion of MECO generates $4.30 in new tax revenue for every dollar of new government expenses. And then the expansion of diversified foods is expected to generate $5.50 of new tax revenue for every dollar of new government expenses. So therefore, based on our recommendation, the St. Tammany Corporation encourages a positive vote from the council on these three expansion projects.
Thank you, Mr. Messer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any questions? Mr. Bender.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Massengill.
Yes, sir.
Just a few questions.
Yes, sir.
I'm not on the Finance Committee, and I was not able to attend, although I was invited, and I appreciate that, Monday night. On jobs, and I've reviewed all of this, happy to see new jobs coming in. In the past, those of us who've been here a little while, okay, we had questions in the past about documentation.
Yes, sir.
On creation of jobs. That's not to say that there was any determination that anything was done improperly.
Yes, sir.
And I certainly am optimistic that everything will be done properly if this is approved. What is the documentation process on this?
Given the new rule changes to ITEP, there's a couple of pieces that happen. There's now an annual review and oversight and audit of the business as it relates to the job creation and all clawback measures that will be put into the agreement with the company. That's actually an addition that's happened. We, at the local level, will also be doing that in our evaluation. Once LED does that on an annual basis, we'll be getting copies of that as well. If we find that a company is in default of that, they will be required to actually make a payment within that year of the taxes that they should be paying. That happens as a result automatically. And then you all also have the opportunity to make a recommendation to the Board of Commerce and Industry on the further status of that ITEP in that community.
Thank you. And of course,
Yes,
I'm hopeful that that certainly would not occur.
We've been fortunate. Just in the last 10 years, we've actually only had 11 applications in St. Tammany Parish.
I understand. Second, does the state in this program, does the state of Louisiana, as also as a taxing body, do they kick in anything from the state revenue into this industrial program?
But not necessarily into the ITEP program. It is
what I'm
a tax
talking about.
abatement for the local taxes, yes, sir. But there are other incentives that could be a part of that that's put into the package, but that's going to be on a case-by-case basis because it's all attached to the ad valorem.
Okay. So the state, in essence, under this program,
Yes, sir.
it's strictly ad valorem, and they're not participating in supplying revenue relief, whether it's income tax, a percentage of a sales tax on the state side. And I'm not criticizing.
Yes, sir.
I like to get educated on the topic, okay? This is wholly designed on a per parish basis.
That is correct, specifically for manufacturing alone. Now, there
No, I
may be
understand.
other incentives that are a part of that package, but that's on a project-by-project basis.
Okay. And the last question is, and I don't know if this is accurate or not, but I figured you could answer this.
I'll try.
I guess we've heard, is this going back solely under the state's responsibility next year? And parish councils or police juries across the parish will be removed from having a say on this process beginning next year?
I think I would wait and see. There's been legislation that's been introduced. Many of you all might have seen that in the papers. There's lots of ideas about that, but I suspect the local endorsement piece will be one that's going to have a lot of debate. So I would just hang tight and see what the process is going to be through the course of that. Now that that process is here, that it's anchored, I think it's going to take a lot to actually remove the local piece, and I'm not sure you will necessarily see that. We at the local level, in terms of an economic development organization, we're not opposed to that as long as the process is consistent, you can understand it, business knows how to access to it, and then we play a role in that at the economic development organization.
I appreciate the information. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Bender. Madam President. Go ahead.
Okay. I would just add that there have been 2 bills dropped already to change the ITEP, but it does keep local participation. Now, what comes out at the end, we don't know, but I've started talking to our delegation saying it's very important to us to have at least a seat at the table. So I think we will have some participation. How that looks, I don't know, but we will have.
If I could briefly comment on what our parish president just said, just real briefly.
Yes, sir.
And Madam President, I'm glad to hear you say that, because the reason this is not a negative, but the reason I asked about, does the state, for example, have, let's just call it skin in the game?
Yes,
okay.
sir.
And on this, they don't. That doesn't mean to say that it doesn't benefit the state in some way. However, with us having the skin in the game and them not, having it strictly go back to the state for total 100% approval without our involvement, I agree with our president that we should have a spot at the table. That's all. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Taladano?
Thank you. Mr. Lorraine, I don't know if the record was clear that I made a motion to recommend favorably on this particular application. Yes. Then that was simply, I wanted to cover that.
Gotcha. And we had a second. Okay. Okay. Well, before we do that, I just have one question.
Yes, sir.
One of the things that when we do this, we affect some taxes, fire districts and other entities that we regulate in the parish. And will they have an opportunity to be in the conversation also when this goes? I know we received this, you have 30 days, or it goes into effect, right away. But will they have a voice at the table so that they can participate and discuss issues along the way?
But we can create that process. I think, if I remember right, you'd actually made a recommendation that we notify all the fire districts.
That's correct.
In the context of when this process comes up. I would not oppose that, and I'm certainly in favor of that if you all feel like that's needed.
Well, I just wanted to have that on the record, though.
Yes, sir.
And thank you, Chris. And,
yes, sir.
I appreciate it. We have Mr. Foxworthy here. Oh, I'm sorry. Chris, go ahead.
One more question.
You jumped in on me when I didn't see
Yes,
it.
I snuck in on you.
Yes.
I'm kind of there with Mike, the fire districts and other areas, school board, and all, they really need to be involved in this. So I guess I got a question. When I see this program, I see this dependable glass. We're talking a total of 6 jobs?
That is, yes, sir, that's correct.
So normally would a program this be geared towards more of a bigger type employer than just six jobs?
Actually, with the ITEP, there is no minimum. Now, we've seen smaller projects, and most of these projects that have come through in St. Tammany have been smaller projects. Diversified is a little bit of an exception because it is such an amazing expansion project that we were able to do. That's a wonderful win for Louisiana and St. Tammany Parish. But there's no minimum.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
And I should also point out, Mr. Chairman, thank you for the reminder. Let me also report back, since you mentioned the fire district. We have since coordinated a meeting between Diversified and the fire district that they're involved in at our office to have some further discussions at your recommendation. We've also scheduled a meeting with all the fire chiefs to talk about how we can better engage and communicate in this particular process with ITEP at our office in the coming week.
Well, thank you very much, Chris, and
Yes,
I'm not
sir.
surprised that you taking the initiative in doing that, so thank you very much.
I try to listen.
Yes, sir. Mr. Taladano?
I'm going to defer until we get to diversify. That's the next one up.
Is Mr. Foxworthy here? Yes, sir. Would you like to speak on this? Have your card, sir? Come on up to the mic, please.
Thank you, sir. I'm only here available if you all have any questions.
Okay.
I'll be glad to share it. This is the first time I've ever applied for anything. Been in business 56 years, downtown Covington. I started the company by myself. Today I have 38 employees. But let me share a little thought with you all.
Would you please just state your name for me so we
My name
have it
is
on the record?
Norman Foxworth.
Thank you, sir.
I've been approached by several companies over the years to relocate my company totally out of state. And I've chose to stay in St. Tammany Parish because this is where I grew up. I graduated from Covington High. My children are all raised here in the St. Tammany Parish area. 75% of my employees are St. Tammany Parish residents. The money that they earn at Dependable Glass, they're able to feed their family, and their children go to school here in St. Tammany Parish. So I'm available for a lot of questions if you all would like to, but thank you all for considering it.
Thank you, sir. I see no one in the queue for any questions, but we really appreciate your business and your service to the community, and we thank you for that. Thank you. Okay, seeing no one else in the queue, would you please vote?
Motion is unanimous, 2 absent.
Thank you. Number 3, under resolutions, Resolution CS number C-6090, resolution to approve, reject board-approved application for industrial tax exemption for diversified foods and seasonings.
Yeah, Mr. Marino, thank you very much. Once again, for your record, per your mandate, your Finance Committee met extensively with the representatives from Diversified Foods. We had that meeting last Monday. They appeared and answered any questions. We also had the benefit of the work effort of Mr. Massengill's Economic Development Corporation, who vetted it extensively. He will also report to you that there was a subsequent cost-benefit analysis done for that, all of which is favorable. And with that having been said, let me mention one other thing. And Chris made a very good point about it, small versus large companies. The great aspect of this program, among others, is the fact that it helps small companies too. It's not limited to these big mega corporations. In this case, Diversified Foods is a much larger company, but they derive a benefit by this program because they qualify for it and they meet the test and the litmus test that we put them through. But also Dependable Glass, which is a company that's had its full legacy here in our community, also have a benefit to be derived from same. And that is one of the great aspects of it, along with the point that someone asked, I think it was Jerry, and that is these things will be monitored so that if the companies do not do what they say they will do, we're subject to having those funds, tax funds, rebated to us. And the other footnote I'll mention to you with regard to Diversified, as Mr. Massengill and I know, and your Finance Committee knows, is here was a company that is now relocating part of their operation from another state back to Louisiana in St. Tammany Parish. So another great part of this incentive for this company is that they're bringing back to Louisiana and the entire parish substantial dollars that were otherwise going to be in Nebraska, where they had part of their operation. So it's a double plus for us on that. With that, I'd ask Mr. Massengill to make a brief record of statement of your research and the cost-benefit analysis before any other questions are entertained or the vote be had.
You need a second, right?
Second.
And we'll go through it one more time. If you want him to come up, just,
I'm sorry.
just ask him.
I'm sorry.
Okay?
I'm sorry. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Lost my head for a second.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Balisaro. Thank you. Mr. Massengill, would you like to come up, or are you finished? Your first, I would assume your first one was. No, sir. We don't need a whole lot. No, sir. You were very good on the first one. Okay. Seeing no one in the queue, please vote.
Motion is unanimous, 2 absent.
Number 4, Resolution CS number C-6091, resolution to approve, reject the board-approved application for industrial tax exemption for mechanical equipment company. Mr. Taladano.
Thank you. For the same reasons and the fact that this company and their application was also vetted by us and the Economic Development Corporation, I move for a favorable recommendation and acceptance of that.
Second by Mr. Belisario. Please vote. Seeing no one in the queue, please vote.
Motion is unanimous, 2 absent.
Thank you. Thank you, Chris, and thank you for everything, and we'll see you next time, sir. Yes, sir. Have a good night. Okay, we'll get back to the normal schedule now. Ordinance for introduction. Number 2, ordinance calendar number 6155, ordinance providing for the sale of $30 million of sales tax bond series 2019 of sales tax district number 3. Mr. Ryan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Akers, before you down, I'll let him explain what the ordinance does.
Perfect, sir.
I'm the numbers guy. He's the document guy.
Thank you, Mr. Akers. Please go right ahead.
I'll be very brief. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Jason Akers with Foley and Udell. The ordinance being introduced is a companion to ordinance calendar number 6143 that's on the agenda for adoption later on. Without adoption of 6143, the ordinance that's being introduced is virtually worthless at this point. So we'll make another presentation a little bit later. Please, the council. This ordinance is the actual bond ordinance. Right now, it has a number of blanks in it because those are matters that are still being filled in between now and the day the bonds are going to be sold, which is May 1st at 11:30 a.m. So we're introducing it with blanks. We'll come back and fill those in with a substitute ordinance or an amended ordinance at your next meeting. Right now, we're going through the rating process. We anticipate State Bond Commission approval in the coming weeks, and we expect a favorable sale on May 1st, and I'm sure Jim can tell you how great the market's doing right now.
Market's still doing very good, Mr. Chairman. We're up a little bit, about 10 basis points since the Agenda Review Committee, but still a very good market, and I'll say it for the 15th time, and I'm going to say it every time I'm up here. Thanks to the hard work that Leslie and the administration, y'all have done to get your rating bumped up to a AA+, you're going to get a good rate on it.
Well, and I know you say it every time, and we know it. We know the work she does and the whole administration, and it's great to hear someone outside that in your profession that comes up and says, we're very lucky. There's only, I think you told me 6 or 7 somewhere along the line.
As a fellow bean counter, I mean, I know the work that she does, and I know how hard it is, and I have a great deal of respect for the work that she does.
Well, once again, I want to thank you for that, and we appreciate Ms. Long and her entire team. Do I have a motion?
Second.
Motion by Mr. Stefasik, second by Ms. O'Brien. Please vote.
No? It's introduction. So this is an introduction. No vote.
No vote? Okay. I'm sorry.
That's all right.
Okay. All righty.
Go to 18. Okay.
Let's go
18,
to,
19.
no, number 14.
Oh, yeah, me.
Okay. Resolution number 14, CS number C-6101, resolution to acknowledge receipt and review of the 2018 Municipal Water Pollution Prevention Environmental Audit Report for Crossgate Sewage Treatment Facility. Mr. Belisario.
Yes, I just want to make a brief comment. I had reviewed the report, compared it to prior years. I had a meeting last week with Mr. Tim Brown, the Director of Environmental Services. I just want to compliment him. This was a well-defined report. There was substance to each of the issues that he had to explain, so it was very clear. And I personally believe we're going in the right direction. There's more things we have to do, but we've made tremendous progress since last May. And the utility work group has worked well with the administration, and you can see it in the results and how things have improved in the Crossgates area. Thank you.
Motion by Mr. Belisario, second by Mr. Canulette. Please vote.
Motion is unanimous, 1 absent.
Thank you. Number 17, Resolution CS number C-6104, resolution supporting legislation granting the Justice of the Peace courts and constables in St. Tammany Parish jurisdiction regarding the enforcement of the Parish Code of Ordinance relative to property standards and nuisance violation. Mr. Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We very briefly just want, for the sake of this group and the audience, as well as the viewing audience, we'd just like for someone in either staff to explain, I guess that's a very brief summary explanation as to, number one, where this legislation is going to be taking its initiation from, whether it be at the parish level or the state level, and number two, just summarily explain what the current situation is now as it relates to the enforcement of parish codes and dealing with standards of nuisance in the civic area, and what once this legislation, if it passes, what impact it will have on the current situation that we have before us now.
I think I'll respond to that.
Please go, Mr. Hand. Thank you.
With Mr. Fontenot and the administration, Ms. Renee, who deals with our legislation. Senator Donahue is the one who has introduced the bill for us. We had a meeting several weeks ago with Senator Donahue, and everything was set to go, and he's actually introduced the bill. What the bill does is, as you know, due to budget constraints, we've had to reduce the number of code officers who are available in St. Tammany Parish pretty drastically. We're down to about maybe 3 to cover the entire parish. However, some years ago, we had looked at Caddo Parish, had approached the legislature about granting to it, the Justice of the Peace in Caddo Parish, the ability to enforce their code of ordinances. So using that as a model, and with the loss of the code officers, we decided to proceed with a piece of legislation that, if passed, will grant to the Justice of the Peace in St. Tammany Parish the ability to hear our code cases that deal with nuisances and property standards, and also the constables will be able to write the citations dealing with code violations throughout the parish. The one exception will be, we had a meeting with Mr. Bender's assistance with Judge Lambs in wards 8 and 9. Slidell City Court has jurisdiction in Ward 8 and 9. However, Ward 9 does not have a Justice of the Peace, where Ward 8 does have a Justice of the Peace. So the way the bill is written is that they will share, Judge Lambs and the Justice of the Peace from Ward 8 will share jurisdiction in Ward 8, but all of Ward 9's cases will go to Judge Lambs, who actually has the authority in Ward 9 already. We're going to be getting in Wards 8 and 9, we're going to be getting the summons printed up to where, because Judge Lambs currently has jurisdiction in 8 and 9, we were going to be presenting cases. Only in those wards we can start presenting cases to them. This gives us another tool in our tool shed as far as the enforcement of our code. And we will have, the way the legislation is drafted, we will be able, this body, in connection with the administration, will be able to determine how we further define property standards and nuisances. So it'll give us greater authority, greater ability to bring enforcement action against those people who, once cited, do not come into compliance.
Thank you, Terry. And I know this is just an introduction.
Yes, sir.
And there's room for a lot more questions to be answered should they arise, but I think this at least gives some segue into the whole issue, because a lot of our constituents, I'm sure that purview is shared by my constituents, they ask a lot of these questions at our homeowners meetings about nuisances and how can this be remedied and so forth. And I think this is going to be another example of the parish doing more with less. And mega thanks for whoever came up with the idea.
Okay. Mr. Smith, that's it? Okay. Do we have a motion? Motion by Mr. Smith, second by Mr. Bender. Please vote.
Motion is unanimous, 2 absent.
Number 18, Resolution CS number C-6105, resolution to concur, not concur with the City of Slidell annexation and rezoning of 2.09 acres located at 320 East Horwitz Beach Road from Parish HC-3 to Highway Commercial District to Slidell C-4 Highway Commercial District, Ward 9, District 13. Ms. Blanchard. Motion to concur by Ms. Blanchard, second by Mr. Smith. I have Michael Myers would like to talk on this subject, sir.
Hello, I'm Michael Myers. Madam President, Council, thanks for giving me a moment to speak. I would just like to enforce the City of Slidell's concurrence of annexing this property. It would allow the owner to convert it over to a used car dealership, which would fit in with the rest of properties on Howells Beach Road in Slidell, and bypass the parish's new requirements for extensive landscaping, which would have removed the ability to park enough vehicles at that location for him to conduct business. So I would appreciate a positive vote.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Seeing no one else in the queue, please vote.
Like to make a motion to postpone to the next meeting,
Okay,
please.
there's a motion to postpone. Is there a second to that motion to postpone? Second by Mr. Canulet. Please vote on the motion. Oh, go ahead.
I have to cancel this one
Okay.
because we already started to vote.
Okay.
Hold on just a minute.
She wants to postpone.
Okay. So who made the motion to postpone? And
Ms.
Mr.
Blanchard and Mr. Canulet.
Canulet. Okay, now you can vote.
Okay, motion to postpone, please, till the next meeting. Thank you.
Motion is unanimous, 1 absent, or 2 absent.
Okay, number 19, Resolution CS number C-6106, resolution acknowledging the presentation of the 2018 Louisiana Audit Compliance Questionnaire.
So move.
Motion by Mr. Balisaro, second by Mr. Canulet. Seeing no one in the queue, please vote.
Motion is unanimous, 2 absent.
Number 20, Resolution CS number C-6107, resolution to amend ordinance CS number 18-3977 to make changes to the 2019 capital improvement budget and capital assets.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Taladano, second by Mr. Balisaro. Seeing no one, please vote.
Motion is unanimous, 3 absent.
Okay. We'll go to the appeals. Note that speaking time per side is 10 minutes, 3 minutes rebuttal, and 2 minutes conclusion. Number one, Mr. John Moores Jr., appealing the zoning commission denial on March 6, 2019 to rezone 32,338 square feet located north of Highway 36, east of Manor Street, west of Plantation Street, from NC4, Neighborhood Industrial District, to I-1, Industrial District, Ward 3, District 2. Mr. Fitzgerald.
Yes, I'd like to speak to this. I've met with Mr. Morris, and I would like to override the zoning denial. Several reasons. His proposal and his son's proposal seems to be a very good proposal for that general area of 36. Very limited impact on the one home that's behind it. All in all, I think their plan would do a lot to improve that area along the Highway of 36. So I move to override.
Second by Mr. Thompson. Mr. Morris, you have your card. Would you like to speak? Sometimes it's better not to, but you go right ahead.
Thank you for the warning. I'm John Moores, and I'm here to represent my wife. And thank you for the opportunity to give me a little discussion here. Just a little background, my wife's family has either owned an interest or owned this property for the last 60 years. It's part of, it's the edge of Robindale subdivision, which was developed as kind of lower income housing. And that's been done, and this is one piece that we have left. And we've just hoped that development on Highway 36 would improve, and it's been a slow go for the last 60 years. Originally, well, before the last zoning, this was a zoned highway commercial, which gave us a lot of latitude on what we're going to do. And since the zoning changed to the current zoning prohibited a few things, that's why we're asking a change. Our intentions are to build a climate-controlled RV storage building there. It's got very limited traffic, very limited use. You have a few RV buildings, storage that people come from time to time and take them out. And I think it's far better than some of the other opportunities that are available with stores and restaurants and drugstores, hardware stores, stuff like that available. And currently along Highway 36, if you're not real familiar with, there are auto repair shops. About 200 feet from this, there's an old auto repair shop that's appears dormant. So you have some old container storage things out there. Down the road, you have cars. You have storage facilities up and down the highway. So as Mr. Fitzgerald mentioned, we met with him. We've seen the property. We've talked about our plans. And so I'm asking you to your support to override the planning and zoning's effort, and let's go forward with this project. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Pardon?
Thank you. Thank you.
We have a motion on...
We have a motion by Mr. Fitzgerald,
Bill.
second by Mr. Thompson. Please vote.
Ms. O'Brien? Motion is unanimous, 3 absent.
It's for adoption. Number 3, ordinance providing for the sale of tax bonds in Parish Sales Tax District Number 3. Mr. Akers and Mr. Ryan. I think we got it this time.
Think so. Very quickly. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Jason Akers, again with Foley Udell, along with Mr. Ryan with Government Consultants. This is the companion ordinance I mentioned earlier. This authorizes the sale of the sales tax bonds, $30 million in sales tax bonds to take place on May 1st. It authorizes the parish president to accept the bids. The bids are done electronically. They come in. It's calculated as to which one offers the lowest amount of interest to be paid by the parish. And at that point, the bid is accepted, and we'll memorialize it with the adoption of the ordinance that was just introduced a few minutes earlier.
Mr. Ryan?
Mr. Lawyer, I just wanted to say that I cannot count the number of council meetings and board meetings that I've attended over the years in this business, and I have not laughed. I believe I've laughed harder than I've laughed tonight.
I don't know if that's good or bad. You remember what I said before about not talking?
Can we strike that part from the record, please? Thank you.
But I thank you anyway, sir. Mr. Taladano.
I'm going to move for the adoption of the same and commend both Jim and Mr. Akers for the job they've done on this issue.
Second.
Second by Mr. Balacero. Any questions? Mr. Bender. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yes. That's okay.
You're awful quiet also. All right, please vote.
Motion is unanimous, 2 absent.
Thank you all very much. I hope all y'all have a great weekend.
Thank you, sir. Y'all have a safe trip back. Number 2, ordinance calendar number 6144, ordinance to amend the 2019 operating budget, amendment number.
Move for the adoption.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Taladano, second by Mr. Balacero. Please vote.
Motion is unanimous, 2 absent.
Number 3, ordinance calendar number 6145, ordinance to impose a 6-month moratorium on any commercial building, structure, or property having access to and/or fronting on Brewster Road. Mr. Thompson? Motion by Mr. Thompson, second by Mr. Canulette. Please vote.
Motion is unanimous, 2 absent.
Number 4, ordinance calendar number 6146, ordinance to authorize the parish president to acquire by donation a lot in Palm Plaza subdivision. Mr. Fitzgerald? That's yours?
So move.
Motion by Mr. Fitzgerald, second by Mr. Thompson. Please vote.
Motion is unanimous, 2 absent.
Number 5, ordinance calendar number 6147, ordinance to declare lots in division of New Covington as surplus property and to authorize the disposal of same. Mr. Thompson?
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Thompson, second by Mr. Fitzgerald. Please vote.
One more time, Ms. O'Brien. Motion is unanimous, 2 absent.
Thank you. Ordinance calendar number 6148, ordinance to declare multiple tax adjudicated properties as surplus and to authorize the sale of same. Mr. Balacero?
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Balacero, second by Mr. Canulette. Please vote.
Motion is unanimous, 2 absent.
Mr. Taladano, you wanted to say something?
No, on the next one, Mr. Lorino.
Okay, thank you.
Too quick on that.
Oh, yeah, sometimes you're very quick, sometimes you're very slow. Ordinance calendar number 6149, ordinance amending the Parish Unified Development Code to include the additional abutters notice provision. Mr. Taladano.
I'm going to move for the introduction with a brief statement.
And a second by Mr. Balacero.
Thank you. Mr. Canulette and I have worked on this ordinance for several months with the help of Sydney. I think it's going to solve a problem here in our parish for you. When we hear people come before the Planning and Zoning Commission and say they did not get notice, this is going to alleviate that problem, and it's going to, at the same time, in those cases where someone might not have gotten notice, this is going to assure they will get notice. So we think it's a good ordinance. We think it's going to solve a bit of a problem when it occurs, and Chris and I have been trying to get to this point for several months, and we thank Sidney for all of his help, too. With that having been said, if not having done so already, I move for the adoption.
Thank you.
Seven.
Motion and a second. Please vote.
Motion is unanimous, 2 absent.
Ordinance calendar number 8, ordinance calendar number 6150, ordinance amending the official planning zoning map to reclassify 5.049 acres from A-1 to I-2 and RO, Ward 8, District 13. Ms. Blanchett?
I believe I have a motion.
Second.
Motion by,
You're not going to change?
motion by Ms. Blanchett, second by Mr. Stefanczyk. Please vote.
Ms. O'Brien, Mr. Stefanczyk. One more time, Ms. O'Brien, just hit it and give it a minute, please. Mr. Stefanczyk, thank you. She hit it again. Motion is unanimous, 2 absent.
Thank you. Number 9, ordinance calendar number 6151, ordinance amending the official planning zoning map to reclassify 0.552 acres from A-4 to PF-1, Ward 9, District 14. Mr. Smith.
Move to adopt.
Motion by Mr. Smith, second by Ms. Blanchett. Please vote.
Motion is unanimous, 2 absent.
Number 10, ordinance calendar number 6152, ordinance amending the Parish Unified Development Code to add continuing care retirement communities.
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Balisaro, second by Mr. Canulette. Please vote.
Motion is unanimous, 2 absent.
Number 11, ordinance calendar number 6153, ordinance amending the official parish zoning map to reclassify 62,6256 square feet from A-4A to A-4A and MHO. Mr. Bender.
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Bender, second by Ms. O'Brien. Please vote.
Motion is unanimous, 2 absent.
Okay, discussion and other matters. Number 1, motion to refer to the Zoning Commission for recommendation an ordinance to amend the Unified Development Code to provide definition and regulation regarding short-term rentals. Mr. Stefanczyk.
Whoops. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We've been working on this a long time. Carlin and I and several other people have been working on this to try and address the short-term rental problem in St. Tammany Parish. It's certainly a matter of contention with everybody, and and what our role is with this now tonight. I noticed when I was at my meeting last night that there was a piece missing out of there that I thought should be in there. And I think our chairman has the wording for that, that we're going to send along with this. But it will go from us to the zoning commission. The zoning commission hopefully will hold public hearings on it and make whatever changes they desire to what we have presented to them tonight. And then they will, once they are completed and have something done, they'll send it back to us. Our goal then is to, or our job then is to look at it, make any changes that makes it palatable, more palatable for us, or accept or reject it. And I think all those things have to happen. It's not a short process. My guess is that people that are talking about this, I'm telling you, it's going to be another 4 to 6 months probably because of the process we have to go through. And I think we've addressed, Sydney's here, could address it maybe, but I think we have addressed perhaps all of the code changes that would require any kind of a publication or notice. And I think with that in mind, it might get through a little faster. But if they have to change any of the the basic areas of the code, then they're going to have to advertise that and get the changes made, and that adds another month or two onto everything we're doing. So with that in mind, I know I put the motion on the floor to refer this to the, move to adopt this ordinance is what I want to do, or resolution rather.
Is there a second to that?
Second.
A second by Mr. Balisaro, but before we vote, I want to say just a couple of things. Steve, I know you've been working on this for a very long time and put a lot of time into it, and it's still a long process going forward. So, but when I was looking at it, as you know, when we started discussing, you started discussing this, I had a couple of issues that I thought were very important. And speaking to some of the homeowners associations, especially in the last couple of weeks, they have concerns about short-term rentals in residential communities. And so what I did was I asked Ms. Carlin there to put an amendment to what we're sending over to planning and zoning, and to let planning and zoning look at it and think about it and so forth. But what I'd like to do is read that, and it would be number 5 on your second to last page. It starts at the bottom. There's a couple above, but it's just references. This is the actual amendment. And it reads, the owner of a short-term rental operating in a residential zoning classification must have a valid homestead exemption and must be present for the duration of a short-term rental guest visit. A letter detailing the name and contact information of the owner, including the phone number, address, and email if available, along with the proof of a valid homestead exemption on the property to be used as the short-term rental, must be provided to the Department of Planning and Development at the time of the application. And as I said, the reason why I put that forward tonight is there's a great concern in some of the residential communities that I represent that feel that they're not totally against short-term rentals, but they feel like if it's a short-term rental in a residential community and not in a commercial area, that the person living there and operating it should be an owner and a vested person in that community. And I agree with that. At one time, I had the opinion of no short-term rentals in a residential community. And just so, and they'll hear it again, but a lady called me and she says, Mike, she lives in one of my subdivisions, and she said, Mike, she said, my husband and I are retired. We have a one room, we rent that out. I'm here, they pick up the keys here. They looking at me all night, and I'm watching the whole thing. And so that's the reason I put this forward, and I ask for the consideration of the council to do that. Mr. Bender?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, as I understand it now, as it's stated on our discussions and other matters, residential going to the zoning commission, without your amendment, residential would not even be considered, because it's strictly commercial and mixed-use zoning districts. So looking at page 1, there's also a change to, whereas short-term rentals are not compatible with the uses of residentially zoned districts, and inserted in there in the blue is except in certain limited situations.
Yes.
So, Mr. Chairman, I'm just asking so that I have it this very clear in my mind. Is your amendment designed to open the door for short-term rentals in residential neighborhoods?
No, my amendment is there's people that are doing that now as we speak tonight, sitting here at this table, and I'm looking at you going on in residential. And some of that is what I call a legitimate short-term rental. If someone has a vested interest, rather than, as I have in one of my subdivisions, a house that is in a residential that is bought and is being used as a short-term rental.
You're opposed to that?
Yes, sir. Absolutely. And that's why I say I would like to see it. If a person is doing that, they own the homestead exemption. They file for the homestead exemption. On top of that, they are present while this is going on. And if somebody is making noise, they are there. They right there doing it. And I think that protects the residential people with this short-term rental issue.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, may I ask you one other question for so I understand? In the case of, and I think I'm accurate on this, people are entitled to rent a room in their house, okay, to someone else. You can't add a second kitchen or anything like that, correct, Sydney? If you're in a single residential neighborhood and you've got a widow, okay, and she wants to rent a bedroom to someone, this has been done all the time.
Right now, there's no time limit on those rentals.
What's that?
Right now, there is no time limit on those rentals. You could rent that room for a day, a week, a month, a year. My understanding of short-term rentals, right now, you could rent your house for a day.
Oh, no. I understand. That's why we're going through this.
I think what this would do, and not having studied the ordinance, I've seen it but not studied it because it's going to the commission, this would limit that type of rental to a longer-term rental period. And I don't remember what the rental period is.
And that's what I'm getting at. Are you looking to go to a longer-term rental to that one bedroom?
No, sir.
Oh, no, you're looking to be able to rent that bedroom with the owner present.
Yes, sir.
Day to day to day.
Yes, sir.
So I understand.
Yes, sir.
Thank you very much.
Right. And Jerry, the most important thing is, I believe, is that, remember what we're saying here, residential community, short-term rental is a business.
Oh, I agree.
We're putting a business in a residential community.
I agree.
And people have invested their livelihood in their property.
I agree with you, Mr. Chairman.
And I really believe that that's why that person doing this should have the homestead exemption.
Oh, I agree with you.
Okay, sir.
Thank you.
Mr. Stavancic?
Yeah, I just wanted to, I agree with Mike's amendment, and I thought we had it in there, and I apologize that it didn't get in, but I think you know I missed the last meeting, and you know why.
Yes, sir.
And I was out of town, so all that stuff didn't get reviewed like I should have and didn't get in there. I do at this time want to thank Carlin. Believe me, she has put in one heck of a lot of time on this. Terry has given me advice, not legal advice, but I certainly have gotten understanding of stuff. And I'm going to tell you, we had 2 public hearings on this, and we had both sides. And whether you like it or not, this is going to be a buzzsaw. And before we get done, it's going to be a free-for-all out here in some of these meetings, because these people got hostile at some of the meetings. And I just want you to understand, it's, I guess that's part of being a parish councilman, because we're going to have to come up with something that corrals what's going on in this parish. And I think, to cite an example, like Mike said, I can understand certain areas where people might want to do this, but Bel Air subdivision, which is north of me, and I live on the golf course, and in my own subdivision now, they are renting houses out for people that have come down here to go to New Orleans, and they're doing it on a daily basis. There's a lot more to it than just these rules. People are afraid to let their kids out to play when they don't know who their neighbors are going to be on a day-to-day basis. And that's a big problem. And then you add to that the fact that they rent out a house, and so they let 20 people come to it, and they only have 4 parking spots. That's right. And then they're blocking the streets and doing everything else. So you really have to take a look at this. I want everybody to look at it, because I think Carlin and I have mashed our brains so hard together. It's time that we turned it over and got everybody else's input and start moving this thing along. So,
Dilly.
I just wanted to comment on that.
Well, no, I Mr. Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And just rise to a point of concern that I have, especially in lieu of the fact that when we started talking about this thing, it appeared that we were not going to be falling on the side of any kind of short-term rentals in residentially zoned communities. And while I appreciate your concern with the resident that you had the conversation with, and it kind of helped you to understand what could be the case in some extenuating circumstances. But I still think that we may want to give some more consideration to being exclusive in our approach to not allowing any short-term rentals in residentially zoned communities, and just in lieu of what Mr. Stefanski just shared with us. And there are many other reasons why we should consider that. But I think that we may be opening up a Pandora's box here if we try to put a Band-Aid on this problem that could potentially come back to bite us. I just want to put that on the record for whatever it's worth.
No, I'm sorry. And Mr. Smith, I agree with everything you're saying. And I'm not saying, as we know, we're not voting on the actual final as we speak. And as Mr. Stefanski said, this will probably go on for about 6 or 8 months or maybe longer. But once again, when I look at some of the issues that are going on around the country, the city of New Orleans, other spots that are chasing their tail and communities falling apart on short-term rentals, I believe when I sit in someone's homeowners association meeting and I look at them and they say, Mike, I didn't buy in a commercial area, and so that's a tough call on both sides, And so we just have to make the call when the time comes, in my opinion, and whatever comes of it, and that's what I signed up for, and so I thank you. We have one card, Mr. Evan Plash.
Good evening, gentlemen. Evan Plochet.
Good evening, sir.
I'm here representing the Alliance for Community Prosperity. We are a group of short-term rental owners in St. Tammany Parish that own and operate short-term rentals. We are opposed at this point to this ordinance going to the Planning Commission at this point. We have asked repeatedly to be included in the discussions about this and have had very little ability to influence anything or to even express our opinions about how short-term rentals should be regulated in this parish. And make no mistake about it, we believe that regulations are appropriate. But we have been given no voice in this process. And so I'm asking you all at this point, because this is a serious, serious ordinance that could affect this parish for the next 50 years, decades to come. And you're talking about changing a process by which people in St. Tammany Parish have rented their homes for vacation rentals since the 1800s. My grandparents came to Covington and rented vacation rentals in Covington in the middle 1800s. This is not anything new, okay? You have to understand that there is a lot of waterfront property, as you all know, in this parish. A lot of people own waterfront property and they rent it, and they've always rented these things as vacation homes. They are very expensive to insure. My brother has a house he just sold, $12,000 a year on Bayou Bonfuca for flood insurance only. You can't afford that people can't afford to own these houses. So what I'm asking you all is to give us an opportunity. This ordinance, as it's drafted, is a short-term rental ban. It is not a regulatory ordinance. There is not one member of our group that will be able to operate under the way this ordinance is drafted. Characterizing these properties as hotels is going to put everybody out of business. There's not going to be any tax revenue generated. The $20 to $40 million that I told you all about the last time I was here on trickle-down economic revenue in St. Tammany Parish is going to evaporate. And I think that's conservative. I think those numbers are conservative. So we bring people here, they stay here, they love St. Tammany, they think about retiring here because they came here and they stayed here and they stayed on the water and they said, this is wonderful. It's the best thing that could ever happen to St. Tammany. We bring people here, they eat in restaurants, they buy food, they go to the grocery stores, they go to the theater, they do things in St. Tammany. They would never be here had it not been for the fact that we have places that they want to come and stay with their families. And let me make no mistake about this. 50% of our guests are St. Tammany residents, or they grew up here, they have family here, they have grandparents here. They come here for soccer tournaments, they come here for weddings, funerals, and all sorts of events where they want to stay together as a family. That is important. And I think you all should consider all that when you're considering this. And I'm urging you at this point to postpone this ordinance being transferred to the Zoning and Planning Commission. Give us an opportunity to give us some input so that we can hopefully draft something that will be agreeable to everyone. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Call for the question.
Mr. Balacero?
Call for the question. This is a motion just to refer.
Oh, hold on one second. Mr. Balacero made a motion to call for the question, but Mr. Bender wanted to comment on something, so.
Chairman, only
Yes, sir.
because we just heard from
Yes,
the
sir.
gentleman.
Yes, sir.
That's all.
Okay.
I just have a quick question.
Go
for
ahead.
him.
For him? Yes. Okay. Yes, sir. Go ahead.
Sir, can you tell me your name again, please?
Evan Plochet.
Okay, so Mr. Plochet, let me ask you a question. And this is not a gotcha question, okay? I want you
Sure.
to know that. Has your organization submitted documentation to us? Has your organization submitted information to us? I'm not knocking
Yes.
your organization.
The answer to your question is yes.
So, Mr. Stefanczyk, okay, and Ms. Carlin, you're saying have received information from your organization to be able to consider?
Yes.
Okay.
And none of it has been incorporated. I don't know whether it's been considered because we haven't been consulted, but yes.
Okay, but you do understand that this is not the final outcome.
I totally understand that, and I understand, I get that. What I'm saying is that this ordinance, the way it's drafted, is so fatally flawed that if you pass it on to the Zoning and Planning Commission, there's not going to be anything they can do to fix it. It's the whole premise of attempting to characterize short-term rentals as hotels is going to decimate every one of them. They will not be able to operate in St. Tammany ever again. The parish is going to get sued by every single short-term rental owner that currently does it. There's a grandfathering provision in this ordinance that Councilman Stefanski drafted that is totally illusory. It's not going to be effective as to anybody. It's not going to grandfather anyone in. So my point is, it's so fatally flawed that if you pass it on at this point, I think it's going to result in something that is going to be a devastation at the end of the day if it ultimately is adopted in some form. Because you can't do it like this. New Orleans hasn't even tried to characterize short-term rentals as hotels. That's never even been on the table. It is clearly, the intent of this, clearly, in my mind, when reading it, is to do away with every short-term rental in St. Tammany Parish, including the one down the street from Mr. Stefanski's house. That's what it is.
Okay.
Well, I understand the point you're making, and just to add, and I haven't made up my mind on what I'm going to do, okay? I tend to keep the door pretty open. But you mentioned the 1800s. This is 2019. And the differences between the 1800s to our residential neighborhoods and the differences today are night and day. We all know that.
I understand.
So you understand that there are, just as you're talking about, the people who want to be able to do this. I'm not telling them I'm against them at this point. My mind's open. But there's a lot of residential people that believe their home is still their castle. And all of the safety and all of the noise and all of that, okay, has to be considered. Because we also have limited resources in becoming an enforcement agency.
I totally understand that.
Okay, so you just want to be able to give us some more information. Would you send all of your information to each council member?
We want to have, I passed on what we proposed to Mr. Stefanski, to Councilman Groby, and he said he was going to pass it on to you all, and I don't know whether he ever did that or not. So he's not here. I've talked to him about this. He knows that in fact, I sent him a list of things that we had proposed.
I'm asking if you would like to send one to each of us.
Absolutely.
And any of us that would like to read the information will read it, and any of us that don't want to, won't to.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Stefanski.
Mr. Poche, and I just want you to understand, I'm going to go ahead and support moving this to the zoning commission, but we had 2 public hearings, and one over in Slidell and one over here, and you attended both of them. One of the big problems that we saw coming out of those meetings was people bought homes in subdivisions with some expectations that they were going to be able to live a normal family life there without having somebody every day or every week or every, whatever it is, 3 days, moving in next door to them, next to their kids, blocking up parking on their street and so on. So we've looked at all of it, and I'm not saying that what you propose to us is bad. What I'm telling you is I think we have developed an ordinance that's got to go through a vetting process, and it's going to be a long vetting process, as you well know. And I want you and everybody else to go to the planning or zoning commission and express your concerns there. I think you've expressed them to us. We put down into what we think are the most pertinent ideas, and this ordinance is the outcome of that. It does not, and I think maybe I'm misstating this a little bit. I may ask Sydney if I do misstate it to tell me that I'm wrong, but it does not prohibit anyone in this parish from having a short-term rental. It means that you have to get the proper zoning for a short-term rental. And if you can you can apply to the zoning commission to have a property right in the middle of a subdivision And if the zoning commission approves and this council approves it, you can have a short-term rental any place you want to in this parish. But you got to get the correct zoning. And I think that's the key to this whole thing, is there is a process that we go through. Now, you said the grandfather clause. There is a grandfather clause in here that says, because we classified this the way it is, that the grandfather clause says that if you have paid hotel motel taxes on the income that you have gotten prior to December 31st, then you're going to be considered grandfathered in. But since this ordinance just came out the other day, and if you come around and say, okay, I'm going to go run up and pay my taxes, well, you've been renting them since 1870, I'd like to calculate your tax bill. Because, I mean, that's the thing. And so you see where we're coming from, or at least where I'm coming from. And Carlin, and let me tell you, we've hashed everything out. We've looked at all of the other communities that have this, or at least a lot of them, I should say. And we've come up with something we think fits St. Tammany. And I think it allows for short-term rentals in St. Tammany as long as you follow the guidelines. Now, you and I may differ on that.
Ms. Blanchard?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir, if I may. I don't have anything to say to you, sir. Mr. Chairman.
Yes, ma'am.
I'd just like to remind, you can have a seat, sir.
I'd like to respond to Councilman Stefanski. Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman, I'd just like to remind this council that this is not 1,800, that over 80% of these properties that are being used as short-term rentals are bound by restricted covenants that say the properties cannot be used in commercial activity. The people operating are violating the restricted covenants, have no reasonable expectation to use these properties in commerce. It was not their right that they acquired. Their previous owner in history or ancestor in title did not give them that right. I look forward to this going to the planning and zoning and what they bring back for us. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, ma'am.
May I address you?
No, sir. What we did is, like I said, I gave you a chance, and we're talking. Remember what I said in the very beginning?
Sure.
This is not something that we were going to pinpoint. It's going to planning and zoning. Planning and zoning has a chance, and they'll look at it. You guys, the other side, have a chance to go to planning and zoning. It'll come back here, and I'm sure, and I can tell you, if it comes back here and I'm still chairman, we will have some meetings on it in this chamber to hear both sides, because that's the process.
We would like to be heard.
And everyone will be heard. You will be heard, just like the residents that do not want this to be heard. Because I agree with what Ms. Blanchard just said. In a residential community, people do not move in a residential community to have a business next door or across the street. And it doesn't matter if it's short-term rentals or selling pencils, in my opinion. And we'll let the chips fall where they fall on that part of it. So thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Okay, there's a motion. Mr. Bender, did you want to say anything else? I see you on there.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Having heard everything I've heard, I want to offer a substitute motion, please. And I ask our colleagues here to please strongly consider what I'm about to say. My substitute motion is to postpone until our June council meeting for only one reason, but it's an important reason. Right now, I'm getting ready to vote. However, while I believe that Mr. Stefanczyk, Ms. Carlin did a fabulous job, and Mr. Chairman, your amendment is certainly entitled to occur, okay? The depth of this, I want to be able to vote after hearing comments from my other colleagues, after discussing it further as those who want to be a part of a small group to discuss it. That information can be given back out to other council members who are interested through Don, okay? if we want to break into two groups. So it's not an attempt by me to stop anything in motion. I want the ability to become more educated on the entire thing. I am not for having residential neighborhoods converted to non-residential neighborhoods, but I am for understanding everything that's written here, including the amendment, and all of, once this goes to zoning and comes back to us, this is to me almost as if this is a document that's been created and is set in stone. And I know we could change it, but if we want to send it to zoning right now, it seems to me we might want to consider any changes, if we want to make any changes, before sending it to zoning. So that's my only reason for a motion to consider as a substitute, postponing to June to give our council members that are interested, I'm very interested, I got a lot of these, to consider, is this absolutely the way we want it to go to zoning? Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Bender.
And I certainly would ask, I hope one of my colleagues would second that motion.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Ms. O'Brien, second. So we have a substitute, we have a substitute motion, right? We have substitute motion, right?
No, it's
Okay.
really a motion to postpone.
Right.
Yeah, motion to postpone.
It's not a substitute motion.
Mr. Tanner, I don't know if he wants to speak on that or something else.
Likewise.
Who wanted to speak on it?
If you want to speak on the motion to postpone, Stephen, he'd have.
Yeah, yes. Go, I'm sorry, Mr. Tan. Oh, I see it. Go ahead, sir.
All right, I'm next.
Gene was ahead of.
I've been sitting there waiting. There's a lot of confusion. This ordinance, this proposed ordinance, has to go to the sausage factory. That's where it's going. It's going to the zoning commission, and it is going to be changed. There's no two ways about it. But you have to start. You have to have a starting point. Delaying it 1 month or 2 months is just going to move the starting line out to there and start all over again. This is a complex issue, so to postpone it or to listen to someone from the audience about they haven't had their 5 minutes. We all haven't had our 5 minutes. I'm just saying we need to move forward on this and send it to the zoning commission and start that process forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Tanner?
Thank you. I got a question. If we send this document to planning and zoning, they're certainly going to make changes, and they're going to send it back to us for adoption. And if we change what they send back to us, are we going to have to send it back to planning and zoning again?
No.
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 Well, before we start making recommendations, I think we need to talk about, and I agree with Jerry, that we need to know what we send into planning and zoning. And I don't think we know what we send into planning. Maybe that's my fault that I haven't studied it that much, but this is something that I don't even know if I want to do in St. Tammany Parish. Because, hey, St. Tammany, I agree, back in the 1800s, they used to come over here on the train and, and roll the logs down the river and all that kind of stuff. And I've seen in the farmer where 100 years ago where the ladies had tea at Bogafly Park and what have you. But, they still do that around here. But we don't have to go through some kind of rental process to do that. And we all know that from time to time, people rent their houses. I don't know of anybody that rents their houses for 1 or 2 days. Maybe they happen to in your district, but they don't in my district that I know of. And they're probably doing it in my district. But I think if they're doing it, they got commercial activities, and it ought to be zoned commercial. And I don't want commercial stuff in a residential district. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Tanner. And I think that's exactly what this ordinance or what we're sending over there does, but I agree with you. And as Gene said, I believe, you have to get the process started. This gets the process started. They're the experts over there at planning and zoning. They'll look at it. They might send us something back that says, none of this is any good. Throw it all out. And then they might send something back that says, hey, half of it is good. Some of it is good, but we're not going to know it. But nevertheless, we have to get it over there, irregardless. No matter what we do, we got to get it over there. So anyway, there's a motion to postpone. There was a motion and a second to postpone. Right. Please vote.
Motion fails. 5 yeas, 6 nays, 3 absent. Mr. Stefanczyk, because you voted no,
This is to postpone. This was to postpone.
yes,
That's correct.
that's correct. The motion failed. It will not postpone.
Yeah, it will not postpone.
That's okay.
Okay, all right, now,
Hold on, let me,
we had a
Before we go anywhere.
motion to send over. Yes?
can you just
Okay.
give me a minute to write this down?
Take your time, sweetie.
Thank you.
What's that?
Submitted earlier, then it's not in the basket anymore.
I'm sorry, sir?
I had submitted a card to speak, and it was in the basket, it's no longer in the basket, but my name was not called to speak on the issue.
Right, well, we weren't going to do that, okay? And that's probably my fault for doing that. As I said, we were just sending it over there, and we were going to discuss it, so, and it's already been voted on. But as I said, it's going to go to planning and zoning. You can discuss it there, but it will come back here, and we will have a full discussion of each issue whenever it comes back here, if it gets sent over. We haven't voted on that as of yet.
Mr. Chairman, you voted not to postpone, correct?
That is correct.
That's correct.
You haven't actually voted on this yet.
That's what I'm
Yes, we
getting
did.
ready to, no, I'm going to handle the meeting, but you, yes, ma'am. Okay. If you had a card in, they recommend that you come on up and speak on it, so come on up and 3 minutes on each one like we talked about.
Thank you. I do appreciate that.
Yes, sir. Only, you're right, only to refer. This is whether or not we should send it to planning and zoning.
Absolutely.
Not on the merits of it, but whether or not we should.
Yes,
send it.
well, I'm not opposed to some level of
I'm sorry,
regulation.
what is your name?
My name, Eric, last name Luco, Lewko.
Yes,
I'm not opposed to some level of regulation of short-term rentals, but the current draft and the reasoning behind the particular proposal is effectively not to regulate but eliminate vacation rentals. And I've heard about the residential property issues, and I'm a president of a homeowner association which has regulations, and in my neighborhood does not allow it, and it would be enforced on our end. But it's been made obvious, speaking with Mr. Stefanczyk and attending the other meetings, that the catalyst for this whole thing is based upon, and I hear the word problem in St. Tammany Parish. And the problem is a handful of noise ordinance issues that are becoming short-term rental issues. or people trespassing becoming a short-term rental issue. And those regulations are in effect. Pushing this ordinance through will not resolve the issue of noise and privacy for those agitated homeowners, and it's very simple. The rental owners have a database of contracts, of contacts of people they've rented to. There are a handful of houses that are doing parties. I've researched it. There's about 3 to 4 houses out of the over 200 rentals in the parish. Those 3 or 4 homes need to be addressed, and they need to be addressed with rules and laws and ordinances that are already in place. On the other hand of this, regulation is vacation rentals like mine, which are part of the reason that there was an award presented tonight from Expedia to the city of Mandeville about travel. People traveling in St. Tammany Parish, they're not coming to stay at the highway motels. They're coming to stay at a vacation home. I have luxury vacation homes that we rent for a lot of money. That my customers are landing at the airport in Slidell on their own planes, refueling there, going to restaurants I suggest, and so on, and putting those higher end homes, which there are a lot of them that they rent, effectively out of business, that may not be they're in a residential area, but not a residential neighborhood. Properties that are on several acres on pieces of land that are on waterfront properties that aren't controlled by any association restrictions and not even in neighborhoods would also be eliminated from this. My thing is if we don't have the money in this parish to enforce things now, and you're sending people away and saying, we don't want you to travel here because you don't have a place to stay anymore, you're putting a bigger dent in the money situation. So I would say that this document is flawed, and what should happen is enforce the noise ordinances and disturbance of the peace regulations that are presently in place. And that's where your problem lies. It's a very limited, isolated problem that is now going to become a bigger problem for the parish, but for a handful of bad apples.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Does anyone else have anything to say? If you have a card, do you have a card in, ma'am?
I do have a card in.
I'm sorry? Yes, ma'am.
My name is Susie McDaniel. I'm a real estate broker in St. Tammany Parish. I'm with Sotheby's International Realty. I think that there's a lot of merit to what's been said about some of these homes being on the water and the exorbitant flood insurance that they pay, and how for some people, in order to keep the home, they're vacation renting it out. I should also tell you that I also own a vacation rental, but that is not my situation. I am on 8 acres of land. It is a more luxury house. It's 3,600 square feet, 4 bedrooms, 4 baths. Very strict about who I rent it to. I don't allow more than 9 people. It's a 4-bedroom, 4-bath house, like I said. It's in unincorporated St. Tammany Parish. It's a rural area, and wait, it's my time.
No.
It's a rural area, and but yet I don't think it's a commercial area. So I probably, would not be able to continue to do this according to the way that ordinance reads right now. Getting back to me being a real estate broker, I can tell you that recently, within the last 3 months or last 4 months, I sold a home to someone in Slidell who visited Slidell from California and stayed in a vacation rental. It was not mine. And they came here because they were thinking about moving to New Orleans from California, selling their home, getting a nice price for it there, and retiring to New Orleans. They stayed in Slidell. They didn't want to be in New Orleans. So then I sold them a house in Eden Isles, and that's where they retired to. And that gentleman is now, in his retirement, the pastor of a church in Slidell. He wound up, so it's, we could be missing some opportunities here to bring in some good people, and certainly there's a revenue issue involved here too. So, as a broker and as a vacation rental owner, I think that this should be looked at a little more closely. I've looked at the ordinance, and there are some concerns that I have about what it would mean to a vacation owner to have to follow any kind of rules that a hotel would have to follow. Do you have to have handicap access? A lot of these homes, like mine, is on the bayou. It's way up in the air, So, that would mean I'd have to, probably put in an elevator, which I could do, but okay. But anyway, so I just think that it should be looked at.
Thank
Thanks.
you. And once again, I'm going to say it again. This is only sending this piece of paper to the planning and zoning. Everything you're saying can be said at the planning and zoning, and I know they're going to listen to it, but let's hypothetically say they send this piece of paper back exactly the way it goes over there. Exactly. You will have the opportunity to come to this council and express exactly what you're saying. And this council will listen, because there are a lot of maybe different types of scenarios that can be fitted in there. But we can't, we could spend another month on it and try to fit them, but we would never fit them all. So we're getting the process moving to get it done, and then when it comes back, we'll have meetings on it, we'll have public meetings, but then even after the public meeting, you have the right to come here and say exactly what you just said, and people then can say exactly what, council members can say exactly what they just did. I'd like to postpone it for another 30 days. I've heard some things going on, and I'd like to look at them. The process is not over. The process is only beginning, and it's not even put together yet, like Councilman Balacero said. The sausage is not even made yet. It's just getting it started, because let's face it, we do have some issues with commercial operations in a residential community. It may not be all of them, and it's probably not, but we do have that issue, and those people deserve the same right to have this looked at and sent back also. And that's all we're doing here tonight, is sending it there, and let's see what we get back, and then we can play with it and dissect it and change it whatever way we need to. Thank you, ma'am. Yes, sir. You have a card, you come on right up. You have 3 minutes.
Good, and I'm going to be quick.
And you take your time, 3 minutes worth.
I drove 5 hours over here tonight.
You take your time.
Already?
No.
Everybody needs to go and relax. I know they don't.
You go right ahead.
I have had the privilege
What
of
is your
actually,
name, sir?
I'm sorry, I'm Nick DeLon.
Thank you, Nick.
I've had the privilege of actually meeting with Mr. Stefanik and some of the other members of the staff before that actually did hear a voice of mine, and I definitely appreciated that at that point in time, and looked forward to possibly some positive movement. And I do believe that it can be positive. So I just want to say that, and I've listened to everybody and even learned myself by making this drive over here this evening. And I am a property owner. I did live here. I was one of the ones who lost pretty much everything, and I made the best out of it. I was one of the first vacation rentals, here. But you know what? It's worked very well for a very long time through many challenges and hardships, and this will only bring potentially more for me. However, I know I'm not the only one here. I'm also a property owner myself. I live in a neighborhood. I don't want noise next to me. I don't want the neighborhood I live in. I understand it. So I talked to Mr. Stefanik before the council meeting here too, and we kind of joked about like you can't please everyone. And no, you can't please everyone. However, I would like, and I know this wasn't the meeting for this, but since I may not be able to be here next time, I live in an area, I live in Destin, Florida, where clearly their neighborhoods either have HOAs that restrict that, or the majority of them are there for rentals and they understand it. So it is a new thing to the area. But I do believe shutting it down here in St. Tammany could definitely push away a lot of tax revenue that can be shown and proven even by the little business that we run. However, I understand the government definitely needs to regulate. I understand regulations will happen, and that even your tax money, what the government is owed from a business running is understandable, and all of the valid concerns that I've heard. I just ask when those decisions are being made to understand that there may be a few other variations of that. If it's right in the middle of a gated neighborhood and somebody's partying next to it, I understand that may not can be made a commercial activity or a commercial location. But there are some locations, like you said, mixed use and other things that possibly that could operate on a more regulated area. And we are open to listening to that. We do just hope, of course, that that voice will be heard when the time comes. So thank you for even considering this evening.
Well, thank you for driving. And what I know about this council, I know that they will listen to all the concerns. And as you said, you can't please everyone. We have to look and try to work on both sides of it. But I know I made an amendment to it, but that's just to get the process started. And I'm going to listen, and I know there's some legitimate ways, and we should be able to figure them out. And it may take 6 or 8 months, might take a year. There's no hurry. But once again, we have to get the process started.
And I agree, and I thank you guys for even listening to us and hope that we can have some more discussions here soon.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Okay. Seeing no one else, please vote on sending it over to the Planning and Zoning Commission. Please vote. Yeah, Zoning Commission. Got it.
Motion passes. Motion is unanimous, 3 absent.
Thank you. Seeing no other questions, meeting's adjourned.
Thank you, sir.